Welcome back to Raw Politics. A huge protest on Saturday and a petition of over 5 million. No, we're not talking about Brexit, but copyright regulation. People took to the streets across Germany and dozens of other cities. MEPs will vote tomorrow on a new copyright directive. Now, supporters say the proposals will fairly protect artists for their work and make internet platforms responsible for content. But protesters argue the new measures would spell the end of the internet as we know it, leading to upload filters, which could remove content indiscriminately, and forcing websites to pay to use or link to so-called snippets of articles. All right, joining me here in the studio in an issue that is dividing nationalities as well as political groups, we have two German MEPs from the Greens EFA group. We have Helga Truppel from the Greens, as I said, and Julia Reda from the Pirate Party. All right, Julia, first let's talk about why this is so controversial. Can you lay down the ground for us? What makes this directive so controversial?
The intention to make sure that online platforms, large online platforms, pay creators more fairly, I think is shared by everybody. The reason why people are opposed to this proposal is because it would require online platforms to prevent copyright infringement from happening whenever a right holder has notified them of a work. This means in practice that platforms would have to use upload filters that very often also block completely legitimate legal content, such as quotations or parodies that are protected under copyright exceptions and are really important for freedom of expression and freedom of press.
So you think it's just going to be a blanket rule that is going to stifle the internet? I mean, that's your position because you're very much against it.
The proposal does not strike a fair balance. It doesn't ensure that legal content would actually stay online, but rather focuses on the blocking of content instead of fair payment. And I think that is really the problem, because I think it would have been possible to find a fair compromise if the supporters of the law had listened to the people who are now on the street.
What about you, Helga? You're clearly on the opposite side of this debate. Why are you for this directive then?
I'm in favor of this regulation because my intention is to make the internet free and fair. Because now we had for more or less 2 decades that big companies like Facebook, YouTube, Google take the copyright protected content of third people and don't license it. For me, it's not about censorship. It's very much about fairness and doing licensing agreements. Right holders, the platforms, collective management organizations, users who upload material would be safe because the platforms will be responsible, and authors, journalists, musicians, filmmakers will be paid in a fair manner. So therefore, for me, that's really a change of the internet as we know it, because it would be fairer.
It's interesting that you both use the word, free internet, but clearly on the opposite sides of the divide. But when you say that platforms will be able, so musicians and content creators will be able to be paid fairly, but who, to answer Julia's point, who is going to manage that? Who is going to decide? And if it's robots and indiscriminately blocking content from getting online, I mean, how do you police that? How do you implement this directive?
Yes. It's not about ex-ante monitoring excluded in the law. It's about negotiations for licensing agreements. It's very fair. It's like we always do in business life. We negotiated contracts and licensing agreements. And if you do that, the content is legal, so you don't have to block, you don't have to filter. And on the other hand, for parody, pastiche, quotation, review, a lot of young people in the streets are concerned about that. But for that, we have exceptions and we make them mandatory European-wide. So that is a good solution as well.
So Julia, do you not want a fair internet, as Helga is proposing here?
I think you can see from the description that this proposal was drafted only with the music industry in mind, where it is possible to get these kind of blanket licenses.
Helga's shaking her head, but make your point.
Yeah. So basically, if you have a collecting society that can license an entire class of works, then it is a possibility that the platform would license instead of filtering. But overall, this is not the case, because there are a lot of right holders who do not want their content to be on platforms full stop, and they will insist on the use of upload filters. Article 13 says clearly that when a right holder doesn't want to give a license, the platform has to filter. And so I don't think it will be a possibility for platforms to just get licenses for everything.
Helga, why were you shaking your head?
Yeah, for example, that's the law already. You will not have licenses, for example, for Disney films on YouTube, because that would destroy their business model. But there are a lot of artists, you know, with this extended collective licensing system who don't want to be in a collective management organization to do like in Scandinavia. It's about making the approach to the content legal and safe, and for the users as well. Therefore, I like the approach so very much, because the youngsters who were now sued, it will be legal afterwards, and therefore it's a good solution.
So where do we draw the balance? You're talking about balance. You're talking. It's not like you're completely against some form of remuneration for content creators. So where do you strike that balance? It's easy to say balance, but how?
I think what needs to be done to get a fair compromise is to actually get all the parties around the table. In this discussion, the Parliament adopted a position that only favors large right holders, and they completely ignored the criticism from academia, from fundamental rights experts, such as the UN Special Rapporteur for Freedom of Expression. And they even said that everybody who sent emails to the parliamentarians complaining about the proposals was not a real person and was a bot. So what we need is to actually, for the supporters to listen to the criticism so that we can find a compromise that works. You
are again shaking your head, but 5 million people, that's hard to ignore.
No, I don't ignore them.
Sure.
I explain the law. I say what is the intention. For years, I talk to all the different people. We are in one group. You can imagine that we discussed it for years. So I know about all these concerns. But I think they are not legitimate. And my task is to explain what we do and that we make the internet a better place.
I think what people don't see here in the Parliament, there are a lot of people who are lobbying on both sides, and this is really a divisive and emotive topic. But the vote on copyright is actually just one of the items on the agenda here in Strasbourg. There's a lot more going on this week.